I wanted to tackle this latest absurd statement that I read on the music page. Now, this is a video for Christians only, and we're talking about my video that we posted under the very sensational title, Satanic Music in Christ's Worship, or in God's Worship. And I read this post, and I've received this argument plenty of times, and I'm sick to death of hearing it. I've refuted it many times, but it needs a nail driven in the coffin once again, and hopefully this is the last nail. It is the absurdity of the all things created argument. That is, all things were created by God. That's not true. Now, before you get your stuff in a bunch, let's explain that. The Bible says God is love, but it doesn't say love is God. In English, you can make that flip out of the letter from the Apostle John. The problem is, in Greek, you cannot flip it. So people say, well, God is love, so love is enthroned, love is God. No, that's also a misinterpretation. Let's look at what Paul said in Colossians. Colossians 1:15, most often misquoted verse. For by him were all things created. God created music. Nope, let's read the rest of the verse. For by him were all things created that are in heaven and that are in earth, visible and invisible, whether they be thrones or dominions or principalities or powers, all things were created by him and for him. Now, let's go back and look through the dichotomy. Now, who are we talking about? We're talking about Jesus. Go back to verse 15. Who is the image of the invisible God, the firstborn of every creature? Wait a minute. Jesus had a body, therefore he's the firstborn of every carnal creature. But what are we looking at in the creation? Well, all things that are in heaven and that are in earth, the physical universe, were created by him, visible and invisible. Doesn't say the complete set of all things that are created and will be created. This is past tense, that were created, that are in heaven and that are in earth, visible and invisible, whether they be thrones or dominions or principalities or powers, all things are created by him and for him. So we do see the mention of things as far as dominion, which is an abstraction, but it's not an abstract apart from God. God is all powerful. God is a sovereign unto himself. God is the ultimate sovereign, therefore all power comes from him. Even Satan's power was delegated to him by God before he fell. So we do have a delineation of things that are not specifically the physical universe. But note, nowhere in there did it say ideas, thoughts, concepts, or constructs were created by God. It said all things that were created, namely the physical universe. And then the power, the authority of God, as delegated as it proceeds from God. All lawful authority proceeds from God. Kings don't rule by divine right, but any established authority is and supposed to be by divine right, by divine authority. The problem is that men by power seize authority over people and then want to claim it's of God, such as Lenin and Stalin and Mao. But I digress. The point being is that it does not say that music was created by God. It doesn't say that books or every poem was created by God. Now, the latest absurd attempt to invoke this for music is the claim that, well, God created all music, or God created music, therefore all music is good. Well, we got a problem there we'll tackle in a moment, but let's go back and look at that first. They added science. Well, don't you believe science was created by God? You don't believe in physics, you don't believe in math, and that is absurd. Math is a science. Calculus is a science. Physics is a science, but sciences were not created by God. And again, before you get upset, let's look at the definition of these terms. First, let's look at science. What is science? My answer to the people was science is a construct of man, just as a poem is a construct of the poet. And he got upset, but let's look at the definition, and I hate to do it, but in this case it is apropos to use Merriam-Webster's dictionary definition of science. Science, the state of knowing, knowledge as distinguished from ignorance or misunderstanding, And as far as the sciences plural that I referred to just a moment ago, a department of systematized knowledge as an object of study, something that may be studied or learned like systematic knowledge. Wow, and God did not give us all knowledge. There are the Gnostics who go into the secret knowledge that God didn't give us. God says, hey, I gave you some information. I didn't give you all of it. The Bible doesn't give us all knowledge, but this is a systemized thing of knowledge or knowing. That's man-made. What do we know? How do we know it? Well, we'll get to that in a moment, but let's look at another example. Another definition of physics specifically. Let's explicitly look at physics. Physics, and it comes from the ancient Greek word physika, literally nature. But the term physics, in reference to the school of science of physics, is a science that deals with matter and energy and their interactions. The exact definition that I gave, except for I expounded more. I explained that it's not just the nature of the physical universe, but the interactions and relationships of particles and relationships of the interaction of particles in the universe, invisible and visible. That's the definition of physics. You can't get away from that. These are what we know from men. These are the constructs of man, just like psychology is total fabrication of man, the constructs of men. Jung, Freud, Maslow, others. In sciences, we have various ones, such as biology. Let's take a moment and let me demonstrate some biology for you. I'm sick of the trolls that have no education whatsoever. He's talking to me as though I'm an uneducated man. Here we have a large marine gastropod, one of my favorites. This is the commonly called the horse conch. This is actually Pleuroploca gigantea. My favorite. It's a very aggressive gastropod. It feeds on clams and oysters, scallops, and any prey that it can come upon, as well as possibly carrion. But the cool part about this species is that it actually will prey upon other gastropods, regardless of size. And I'll show you in a moment that. Let's look at its cousin from the Carolinas, is a subspecies, a subset of Pleuroploca gigantea. This is Pleuroploca revi. And you'll notice that its whorls are minus the knob protuberances that you see so pronounced on the standard horse conch. And these range, this one ranges in the Carolinas. This species ranges probably from Brazil all the way up through North Carolina, whatever temperate waters it can survive in Virginia and points north. But the point being is the information I'm giving you is based on personal observation, reading books, what men have written down. I just educated you somewhat on biology, but it was not of God. I look in the Bible, I do not find Pleuroploca gigantea. Now, this is the funny thing that people miss with the sciences. God had Adam name every animal. So it is biblical for us to continue naming the different genuses and species that we discover. But again, if we look in the Bible, we're not going to find these. It's not biblical knowledge. It was not created by God. These names were given by Adam and the later men behind him who give these names to these species. It's not God. Science, all science, is the accumulated knowledge of man constructed into a construct as we believe or think that it is true, shared with other men. And it has been an error, it continues in error, and it will be an error in future. You want an example of that? I'll give you an example. Let's see if I can pull this up without destroying my shelf. One of my favorite species on the planet, of course, is the jaws of a sand tiger shark, Odontaspis taurus. Now, actually, I disagree with the new geneticists who want to say that the genotype dictates what species an animal is. So they have recategorized a species as a carcharodonid species, putting it in the order with, or in the family with great white sharks. And I disagree with that. I disagree with it, and I hold to Odontaspis taurus. I am not a geneticist. I go by the phenotype. And Linnaeus and the others, we categorize the species by their phenotype, not necessarily their genotype. And even though the genes may appear to be the same, I disagree that that is the ultimate definer, because genes may seem similar, but encoded in a certain species, they actually manifest in a different phenotype. And there's constant disagreement about this. A lot of people embrace the new updates. I don't, because I'm old enough to have seen science be wrong in the past, and I know it will be wrong in the future. Now, for those of you that want to be trolls, you don't even know half the terms I use. You don't even understand the difference in a phenotype and a genotype when you want to come to me and try to preach evolution and everything else. So if you're going to claim that God created science, you're a fool, or you're ignorantly, willfully ignorant, and you're ignoring reality, you're ignoring the truth, trying to make an argument for your lusts. Because God is very clear. We named the animals, He didn't. You won't find the names in the Bible, therefore it's not biblical knowledge, therefore it's not infallible knowledge. These are the constructs of man. God may have created music in so much as He created the angels and may have taught them music. We don't know. He didn't tell us that. But nowhere in the Bible does it say that God created music. Nor does it say that if God created the initial music, that He created all music. The author or creator, as we are little gods, Jesus said, we are little creators. We are created in His own image. That means we are in ability to be free moral agents and to, by that order, to create things on a lesser level. We can't create as God creates. We can create like He does. We can create new things within the universe that He created. We're responsible for our poetry. We're responsible for our music. We're responsible for our literature. We're responsible for the technologies that we create and use. God probably, or could split the atom if He wanted to, but we're responsible for how we split the atom. But this to claim that because the atom was split, God did it, this is the problem. The logical contradiction, the end result of the God made everything argument, which is alive in the pit of hell, is that God is evil, that God created evil. This is part of the problem of evil that the atheists have that we don't have. This of accusing God of creating evil. By creating beings like Satan that could go wrong, by creating man where He tolerates man's decision in the garden to rebel against Him and to be his own God, God created the opportunity for evil to come about, but He did not create evil directly. Once evil existed, then He said, well, I have predestined or certain men, or I've loved Esau. I've hated Esau and I loved Jacob in the womb, because He knew their actions, what they would be ahead of time. So we have this problem of evil that you will create by claiming that God created everything and therefore you can have any kind of music. The problem is that you are addicted to music, or you have lustful desires for music and you want to stick to it. And it's just ridiculous. This is totally an asinine argument. God did not create science. And this is the other problem. Let me break this down for you again. Sciences are not the universe. Ooh. This species that I show you, this genus species Pleuroploca gigantea, would exist just as it does if I never gave it a name. There are species of animals, flora and fauna that we have never even seen before, that are even coming out now, that still exist despite the fact that the sciences have never discovered them or named them, but they still exist. Our naming of this species changes this species in no way at all. If we change the name, just as changing the name, the scientific name of the sand tiger from Odontaspis taurus to Carcharinus taurus does not change the nature of that animal. The sciences are how we describe it. A poet describes a flower. I think it was Tennyson who wrote about the flower, the flower in the crannied nook on the wall, and he writes a poem about it and describes it. It's beautiful. But that didn't affect the flower. He was describing the flower. This is like a literary hologram. It's a pictogram of words defining and describing the flower, but it's not the flower. Just as the sciences are separate completely from the universe. Biology is not the life in the universe. Biology is man's description and construct of how the relationships and formations of relationships in biology and their interpretation of how certain biological and physiological processes work. But they are not biology. They're not the universe. They're biology. Biologia, life study, the book of life. Just as physics is not the universe. Physics is man's description of the universe. So just to put the last nail in the coffin, I think that's enough on this topic. This guy was blocked because he was making ridiculous and irrational arguments, and he was accusing God of sin. Because if man did not create sin, if Satan did not create rebellion and sin in his fall, and man did not create sinner, then the Bible is a lie. because the Bible said, for by one man sin entered the earth, and by one man we're saved. That is, Adam sinned and fell and destroyed mankind, and Jesus, the second Adam, through his perfect life, brought redemption and salvation through the sacrifice of that perfect life. But we don't have God creating evil. We don't have God creating everything that exists. We have everything that exists in the universe as far as matter, visible and invisible, and the relationships of that matter was created by God. We just read it in chapter 1, verse 15 of Colossians. But God did not create everything that happened after that. That is our interference. That is our things. And when we study and we write books and papers and present that, that is simple descriptions of our opinion, our constructs. Do you understand what a construct is? A construct is a construction or a creation, a systemized knowledge, sound familiar, of what we know. A system of knowledge created by men. We construct it. It's a construct. It's not the universe. So saying that you believe in math, therefore you believe God created it, it just doesn't follow. It's a non sequitur. If you want to go in logical terms, it's a false comparison. God did not create math, by the way. Math is man's construct of the relationships between numbers real and unreal. That is positive and negative integers. We even work with imaginary numbers, imaginary variables. It's great what we can do with calculus. But God didn't create it. That was our creation. So get it straight, get it through your heads, and let's get back to the heart of the matter. The heart of the matter is don't follow your lusts, follow God. Clean up your personal life, be it music, videos, whatever you're doing that's wrong, get it out, purge it out. But if you're so stuck on trying to bring in your worldly music types into the church, into your worship of God, to try to sanctify it so that you can keep that thing that is pleasurable to you, you have a problem, because that's got to go. When we die, we're born again. We die and we're born again. The old man dies with the lusts. Yes, some of the old trappings come back and we have to struggle against the old man, but that's just it. He's supposed to be dead. Those desires are gone. Now we're to be after our Father's business, and there's no time for you to be sitting in church services trying to keep your preferred genre going. Cut it loose, serve God, and you won't please men, but you'll please God. So may God bless and preserve His church until His glory is coming.